Hey guys, tonight we are diving straight into one of history's darkest reputations, the Spanish Inquisition. But not the Monty Python version. Not a single ominous red robe bursting into your living room shouting, "No one expects the Spanish Inquisition." No, tonight you're about to experience the real thing. A grinding, paranoid, bureaucratic horror that seeped into every layer of society. And trust me, it's not as cinematic as you might think. So before we get comfortable, take a second to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And as always, drop a comment below to tell me where in the world you're watching from and what time it is for you. Now, dim the lights, maybe put on your headphones for a more immersive experience, and let's begin. You wake up this morning not in a dungeon, but in your own modest bed. The sun filters weakly through your window. Outside, the sounds of vendors hawking fruit and chickens clucking in the streets of Seville or Toledo drift through the air. The city seems normal, but under the surface, the fear is thick. The Inquisition is not some distant force that only haunts heretics and witches in distant lands. It is here. It is watching. And it consumes the innocent and the guilty alike. Contrary to popular myth, the Spanish Inquisition wasn't all fiery chambers and iron maidens. In fact, those weren't even Spanish inventions. What you'd face is something far more insidious. Endless paperwork, secret denunciations, whispered accusations from neighbours, and a slow, grinding machine of legalese and religious paranoia. Torture. Oh yes, that happened. But first came the waiting, the fear, and the cold indifference of a faceless system. And here's the cruel joke. You probably don't even know why you're being watched. Maybe someone heard you mutter something sarcastic about a priest. Maybe a business rival envies your stall in the market. Maybe your family has converso blood, Jewish or Muslim ancestors who converted to Christianity, and someone thinks you aren't pious enough. Maybe your neighbour's cousin's sister's husband just really doesn't like the way you cross yourself at Mass. It takes so little, and once your name is whispered to the Holy Office, the machine starts rolling. You won't hear a knock at midnight. You'll receive a polite summons to appear for questioning. For your own good, of course. The letter will be sealed and official. The language will be deceptively friendly. You're merely invited to help clarify some small points of doctrine. Nothing to worry about. Just a few questions. Come alone. You will think this is a mistake. You will think that your innocence will protect you. It will not. The Inquisition's goal is not to discover whether you are guilty. It is to extract a confession. Because confession reinforces the system, terrifies the populace, and reminds everyone that no one is beyond suspicion. Whether you believe yourself to be a faithful Catholic or not doesn't matter. You're now trapped in a machine designed to process people, not to understand them. And as you walk through the bustling streets toward the tribunal, you will notice that no one meets your eyes. People know when someone has been summoned. They cross the street. They whisper behind their hands. Because in this world, even proximity to an accused person can taint you. Welcome to the Spanish Inquisition, and you've only just begun. You try to remember where it started, but in this world the roots of danger run too deep and too tangled. You didn't wake up this morning thinking you would be called to the tribunal. No one ever does. The Spanish Inquisition does not swoop down like a thunderbolt. It seeps, it whispers, it infects the very air you breathe. And long before you ever saw that official seal, your fate was already sealed. By words, by glances, by the frail jealousies and petty hatreds of those around you. Perhaps it began with the neighbour, the one whose wall adjoins yours and who always complained about your dog, your late-night guests, your loud laughter. You recall now that her niece married into a family known for their rigid piety. Perhaps it was a single whispered comment over bread, a mention that you did not cross yourself as often as others, that you failed to genuflect at the right moment, that your children were not seen at confession last week. It could have been anything. It did not need to be true. In this world, suspicion is currency, and fear is a weapon wielded by the weak against the strong, by the resentful against the innocent. You remember the gossip in the market, the murmured stories about so-and-so dragged away in the night. The tailor's wife who disappeared after her rival claimed she baked bread without blessing it. The bookseller's son whose shelves contained writings deemed too philosophical. You laughed nervously at these tales. You told yourself you had nothing to fear. You had done nothing. But in the Spain of the Inquisition, nothing is not enough. There is no neutrality. You're either demonstrably pious or dangerously suspect. And sometimes being too demonstrative is suspect in itself. It is a trap with no exits. Weeks ago, perhaps longer, a letter was written. It may have been scrawled by a trembling hand or elegantly penned by a priest. For the greater glory of God. The formula is always the same. The content need not be. The accusations are often vague, deliberately so. Observed in company with known heretics. Failed to display proper devotion. Questioned the authority of the Church. The scribes of the Holy Office do not concern themselves with the triviality of truth. The machinery requires fuel, and denunciations are plentiful. The letter entered the archives. A file was opened. Your name, your family history, your attendance at Mass, your business dealings, all catalogued, all analysed, all weighed. Without your knowledge, a case was already taking shape. And then the inquiries began. Quiet ones. A parish priest asked subtle questions at confession. A friar struck up a casual conversation at the well. A notary examined baptismal records. Did your family fully convert from Judaism? Were there irregularities in your observance of feast days? Did anyone recall hearing you speak in defence of the Moors? You noticed none of this. Life seemed to go on. Yet around you, the walls were closing. The signs came slowly. The fishmonger who once greeted you warmly now avoids your gaze. The baker's boy, once cheerful, now scurries past. Friends offer thin smiles and quick excuses to leave your company. You tell yourself you are imagining it. But in your gut, you know. The shadow of the Inquisition falls silently but heavily. To be suspected is to be condemned in the eyes of the public long before the tribunal passes judgment. Then, the letter arrives. It is hand-delivered by an official courier of the Holy Office. The seal is unmistakable. Your fingers tremble as you break it. The words are polite, almost comforting in their phrasing. You are cordially invited to appear before the tribunal to assist in clarifying certain matters. You're not told what matters. You're not told who accused you. You're instructed to come alone. To seek counsel or speak of the summons is unwise. It would only deepen suspicion. You know this. Everyone knows this. The tribunal does not take kindly to those who attempt to maneuver within its grasp. And so, you prepare. You select your plainest, most modest garments. To dress richly would suggest pride. To dress poorly would suggest shame. You choose words carefully, should anyone inquire about your plans. You do not lie. Lying itself is a sin. But you avoid the truth. On the appointed morning you rise early, your stomach knotted with dread. The streets seem narrower than usual. Faces blur past you, unreadable. You feel the weight of every glance. Are they looking at you with pity, with fear, with satisfaction? You cannot know. You can only walk forward. As you near the tribunal, the crowd thins. The building looms ahead, its stone walls cold and silent. No one lingers here unless summoned. You cross the threshold, heart pounding, knowing that from this moment, your life is no longer your own. The tribunal has you now. The door closes behind you with a sound that echoes far louder than any shout, and so begins your descent into the machinery of the Spanish Inquisition. You wake before dawn, not because of choice, but because the cell does not let you sleep. The stone beneath you is harder than your worst expectations, cold enough to seep through skin and bone. There is no mattress, no straw, no blanket, only the rough embrace of a damp floor slick with condensation. You are not alone. The walls breathe, or rather they sweat. Moisture drips steadily from the ceiling, pooling in uneven cracks. Every movement echoes. Somewhere in the darkness, rats scrabble with the arrogant entitlement of creatures who know they are safer than you. There is no window, no source of natural light. A single narrow slit in the upper wall allows a thin shaft of something that might be morning to trickle in, though you cannot be sure if it is dawn or merely another torch being lit beyond. Time ceases to have meaning here. Hours blur. Your body tells you it is morning because the gnawing ache in your belly reminds you that you have not eaten since yesterday. Or was it the day before? The Inquisition finds no urgency in feeding its guests. Hunger is an ally to confession. The air stinks of mildew, human waste, and the sour, unmistakable tang of fear. You're not in a grand dungeon as the plays might suggest. No vast vaulted ceilings, no sweeping chains, no hunchbacked torturers clanking about. The reality is more mundane, and therefore infinitely worse. This is a cell. A small square oubliette designed not to showcase horror, but to grind it into you, hour by hour. You are alone. save for the noises that suggest others are near, coughing, sobbing, the occasional scream abruptly cut short. The walls are thin enough for sound, but thick enough to deny comfort. You attempt to stand, only to discover that your muscles have stiffened in the cold. You stretch gingerly, aware that even this could be seen as defiance by whoever might be watching. There are no windows for the guards, but make no mistake, you are observed. Through cracks, through hidden slits, through the casual cruelty of a system that thrives on knowing when your resolve begins to fracture. You're not permitted privacy. Your suffering is a performance for unseen eyes. When they do feed you, if today is one of those days, it is with a mockery of hospitality. A wooden bowl is slid through a narrow slot in the door, containing a greyish gruel of indeterminate origin. It smells faintly of turnips, more strongly of despair. Floating on its surface is an oily sheen that suggests it has been reheated several times, or perhaps never properly cooked at all. You eat it. Of course you do. Hunger overrides dignity within a single day. Those who refuse learn quickly that an empty stomach confesses faster than a full one. The latrine is a bucket in the corner, which you now share with the omnipresent rats. You consider moving it farther away, but the cell allows no such luxury. It is either endure the stench, or endure the discomfort of squatting in full view of your invisible audience. You choose the former, knowing that dignity is the first casualty here. Privacy is a concept best forgotten. At some indeterminate point the door grinds open, and two guards, neither speaking, both with the dull expressions of men long desensitized to misery, gesture for you to rise. They do not drag you. Not yet. The Spanish Inquisition prefers its victims walk of their own volition, at least in the early days. A prisoner who walks is a prisoner who still thinks they have a chance. You do not ask questions. You do not speak. You shuffle forward, barefoot, the stones beneath your feet slick with whatever filth has been dragged along by countless others. As you're led down the corridor, the true scale of the place begins to dawn on you. This is not a single dungeon. It is a hive, a sprawling warren of suffering carved into the very foundations of the tribunal. The occasional flicker of torchlight illuminates other cells, some occupied, some ominously silent. The groans and whispered prayers of fellow prisoners drift through the air like incense in a perverse chapel. You are not special. You are merely today's offering. Eventually you are brought to a small chamber, not the grand hall of judgment you foolishly imagined. No robes, no crowds, no stern inquisitors seated in ornate chairs. Not yet. This is an antechamber, a room of waiting and weighing. A scribe sits behind a simple desk, quill poised above parchment. You are ordered to state your name, your birthplace, your lineage. Every answer you give is noted, cross-checked, dissected. The scribe does not look at you. You are not a person. You are a file, an item, a curiosity to be catalogued. When they are finished, you are returned to your cell. No explanations, no timeline, no indication of what comes next. That is the genius of it. The uncertainty is itself a weapon. Days may pass before your next summons, or hours, or minutes. You do not know. You cannot prepare. Every creak of a distant door sets your heart racing. Every footfall in the corridor might be coming for you. The tension grinds at your mind, wears it thin. Sleep becomes impossible. Not that it was likely to visit you here in any case. This is your first morning in the cells. If you're very lucky, it will not be your last. The unlucky ones tend not to see many mornings at all. You would think that the worst part of the Spanish Inquisition would be the torture, or the trials, or perhaps the looming threat of the stake. But no, the true horror, the slow, bone-deep terror, is paperwork. Endless, relentless, soul-sucking paperwork. The Inquisition runs not on fire but on parchment. You have not entered a world of passionate fanatics in blood-red robes. You have entered an office with teeth. Somewhere in a room you will never see, a clerk has already begun the slow dissection of your life. A dossier has been opened in your name. The pages within it will soon contain every detail of your existence, accurate or otherwise. Your baptismal record, your attendance at Mass, the name of every person who has ever shared a meal with you, the purchase of a suspicious book 10 years ago, the offhand comment you made about the bishop's waistline, the fact that you once failed to light a candle on All Saints' Day. Nothing is too small, nothing is too irrelevant. The Inquisition believes that truth is a mosaic built from infinite fragments, and they are prepared to collect them all. And you? You will contribute to this growing mountain of ink whether you like it or not. The next time they bring you to the interrogation chamber, which, let us be clear, is another plain room more office than dungeon, you will be presented with a list of questions. The questions will begin politely: your full name, your age, your place of birth, your occupation. These you can answer easily enough, though the scribe will watch you with an expression of profound boredom, as though mentally deciding whether your life is worth the ink it will take to transcribe it. Then come the deeper cuts. Who are your associates? What are their beliefs? What books do you read? What prayers do you say at home? What festivals do you observe? Which do you not? The questions seem innocent, but they are traps, every one of them. A failure to mention a feast day is noted. An unfamiliarity with a minor saint is noted. An admission that you once read a text in the wrong language is noted. The scribe records it all with mechanical detachment, the quill scratching across the parchment like the claws of some vast, indifferent beast. You might think to protest, to insist upon your innocence. Do not. Every word you speak is ammunition for your accusers. To protest too loudly is to seem defensive. To remain too silent is to seem evasive. You are walking a razor's edge, one misstep away from damnation. And the inquisitors are masters of their craft. They will ask the same question 3, 4, 5 times in different forms, hunting for inconsistency. They will smile reassuringly as they do it, as though this is all a friendly conversation among good Christians. You will begin to question your own memory. Did you really attend Mass every Sunday? Was there a year you missed a pilgrimage? Could your neighbour have misheard you? The seed of doubt is planted and the paperwork waters it well. And this is only the beginning. Behind closed doors, a committee of clerks and friars will pore over your statements. They will cross-reference them with witness reports, however flimsy. They will search parish records for irregularities. They will consult ancient volumes of canon law to find precisely how your failings can be categorized. You're not a person in their eyes. You're a puzzle to be solved, a case to be processed, a cautionary tale in the making. The ink dries faster than you can plead. If the inquisitors find your responses unsatisfactory, and let's be clear, they almost always do, they will return with new documents, lists of alleged witnesses, summaries of anonymous accusations. You will be asked to respond to them, line by line. You will not be told who your accusers are, nor given any opportunity to confront them. The Inquisition is a machine designed to produce confessions, not justice. To demand fairness is to confess ignorance of your place in this hierarchy. And as for the sheer volume of it all, the forms, the ledgers, the transcripts, it is staggering. The Holy Office is a bureaucracy par excellence. Entire rooms are filled with shelf after shelf of parchment detailing the failings of thousands. Your file is now one of them, a growing cancer of ink that will haunt you even if, by some miracle, you walk free. Future inquisitors will consult it. Future accusers will reference it. It will outlive you. The paperwork of the Inquisition is eternal, and here you are, another name on another page, drowning not in fire, but in ink. Congratulations. You've survived your first round of inquisitorial paperwork. The worst is yet to come. You would be forgiven for thinking that the Inquisition, so obsessed with sin and salvation, might at least provide edible sustenance to those awaiting judgment. After all, a healthy body confesses more clearly than a starving one, does it not? But no, the food you receive here is not designed to nourish. It is designed to erode, to remind you, 3 times a day if you're lucky, that you are less than human. Welcome to the fine dining of the Spanish Inquisition. Your first meal arrives not on a tray, but in a battered wooden bowl that looks as though it has served 1,000 doomed souls before you. It is slid through a narrow hatch in your cell door with all the ceremony of taking out the garbage. Inside is a thin grey sludge, technically a soup, though any resemblance to actual broth is purely coincidental. The ingredients are a mystery best left unsolved. Some say it is boiled turnip greens. Others suspect cabbage long past its prime. On certain days, a greasy sheen floats on the surface, shimmering like an oil slick in a puddle of despair. You will eat it, because you must. There is no bread, unless the guards are feeling generous, or bored enough to mock you with a stale, rock-hard crust that could double as a blunt weapon. On rare occasions, if the tribunal has been particularly busy, and the kitchens are clearing out old stores, you may receive a piece of dried fish so pungent it could exorcise demons on its own. The taste lingers for hours, perhaps days. Some prisoners come to prefer the bland soup after a single encounter with this culinary atrocity. Water, of course, is provided, in theory. What arrives is a cloudy liquid of uncertain origin. You tell yourself it was drawn from a well. You try not to imagine the alternative. The wooden cup smells faintly of mould and strongly of unwashed hands, but thirst is a persuasive master. You drink, slowly, cautiously. You do not savour it. No one savours anything here. Mealtimes are not regular. Sometimes you receive food twice in one day, sometimes once, sometimes not at all. The uncertainty gnaws at you as surely as hunger does. You learn quickly that complaining is useless and begging is dangerous. A guard in a foul mood might accidentally spill your ration on the filthy stones. Or worse, they might smile and say they forgot, leaving you to stew in your own emptiness for another 12 hours. And of course, you cannot trust the other prisoners. In this place, a crust of bread is worth betrayal. Starvation turns even the meek into opportunists. If you think to pray for better fare, you should know. The Inquisition considers your suffering part of your penance. To wish for comfort is to display a lack of spiritual fortitude. Hunger is good for the soul, they say. It sharpens the conscience, encourages reflection, and if reflection leads to confession, well, then the soup has done its work. Congratulations, you've been catechized by cabbage water. Over time, your body begins to change. The first few days you dream of food, roasted meats, sweet pastries, spiced stews. Then the dreams fade, replaced by a dull ache that settles deep in your belly, a constant companion. Your limbs grow weaker, your hands tremble, your skin sags. The guards notice. They always notice. When they see you too frail to stand, they will bring the Inquisitors. A starving prisoner makes a pliable penitent. And yet, through it all, there is one small mercy. The communal latrine bucket is emptied less often. Less food means fewer needs. It is a grim equation, but here, small victories matter. You cling to them, because they are all you have. You will eat whatever comes. You will drink what is offered. You will survive, or you will not. The menu is the same either way. Bon appétit. By now, you have learned one truth. Every word is a weapon. And in the Spanish Inquisition, it is a weapon most often turned against its wielder. Silence, you begin to suspect, is your last remaining shield. A flimsy one, granted. More like a wet parchment umbrella in a storm of knives, but better than offering the Inquisitors fresh ammunition. You keep your mouth shut, or try to. But even silence can betray you here. It begins with the guards. They speak little, but they watch everything. Your posture, your expression, the twitch of your hands when a name is mentioned. If you flinch when the bishop's envoy passes your cell, it is noted. If you stare too long at the crack in the wall instead of bowing your head when scripture is recited, it is noted. If you remain too silent, it is noted. Everything is noted. The clerks are tireless, and parchment is cheap. Your silence is suspicious. Your speech is suspicious. Choose your poison. Then there are your fellow prisoners, the ones you hear through the thin walls or glimpse when shuffled down the corridors. You will be tempted at first to speak to them, to seek comfort in shared misery. Resist. The Inquisition delights in informants. Many of those around you are desperate, broken people who would sell their own grandmothers for an extra crust of bread or a shortened sentence. Speak a careless word and it will reach the ears of the tribunal before your next bowl of grey soup arrives. A shared prayer, evidence of secret cult practices, a muttered complaint, proof of heretical discontent. Even a sigh too heavy can be construed as disloyalty to the Holy Mother Church. And when you are brought to questioning, for you will be repeatedly, the danger grows sharper still. The Inquisitors are experts in the art of conversational traps. They ask simple questions, innocent seeming. How is your health? Have you found comfort in prayer? Did you know so-and-so from the parish of St. Dominic? You will want to answer. You will want to appear cooperative, virtuous, above suspicion. But every answer is a snare. Admit to illness? Proof of divine punishment for secret sins. Say you find comfort in prayer? Which prayers? Are they approved? Are they spoken in the correct language? Did you learn them from the proper priest or from some wandering mystic? Even your tone matters. Too eager, and you're hiding something. Too calm, and you're hardened to correction. Too tearful, and you lack proper trust in God's mercy. Congratulations. You have just incriminated yourself in 3 different ways without even realizing it. And should you falter and attempt to defend yourself, Oh, that is a performance they relish. Protest too loudly, and you display guilt. Question the accusations, and you question the wisdom of the Holy Office. Demand to face your accuser, and you demonstrate arrogance before the church. The inquisitors will nod sympathetically, scribes' quills scratching like hungry rats, and the noose of your own words will tighten by the minute. Silence, you think again, is safer. If only it were truly an option. Even your body betrays you. They watch for every involuntary signal. A flicker of fear when a forbidden text is mentioned. A clenched fist at the name of a rival. A downward glance when asked about your family's bloodline. You might as well shout your secrets aloud. And of course, the inquisitors know how to weaponize the silence itself. Lengthy pauses, pregnant silences, staring at you with kindly smiles that say, "We have all day," and they do. You do not. Your nerves fray. Your resolve thins. Words hover on the tip of your tongue, desperate to spill forth, if only to end the unbearable weight of the moment. And when they do, well, you already know how that story ends. Back in your cell, you replay every conversation, every word, every glance. Did you say too much? Too little? Were you too defensive? Too meek? Sleep becomes impossible. You lie awake, heart hammering, as phantom inquisitors parade through your thoughts, dissecting your every syllable. You vow to speak less next time, but next time, they will be ready. They always are. After all, they have centuries of practice. You've had a few days of cabbage water and rat-infested solitude. It's hardly a fair contest. And so you return to your cell, mouth dry, throat raw, mind spinning. You resolve to say nothing, to answer only in the most neutral, pious phrases, to become a living statue of orthodoxy. But deep down, you know the truth. In this place, silence is golden, and like gold, it is exceedingly rare, painfully expensive, and ultimately insufficient to buy your freedom. Eventually the moment arrives. You're summoned again, though summoned is a charitable term. Two guards appear without warning, their expressions as blank as the walls of your cell, and gesture wordlessly for you to follow. You do. Of course you do. Refusal is not an option, and besides, curiosity gnaws at you nearly as much as hunger does now. Where are they taking you? Another questioning. Another endless round of accusatory paperwork. The answer, it turns out, is far worse. Confession. Or rather, what they call confession. You might call it an exquisitely engineered death trap. The room is not what you expect. It is not a chapel, not even a proper confessional. No pews, no candles, no icons to gaze upon. It is simply another drab chamber with a single table, 2 chairs, and a third presence that weighs heavier than stone. The Inquisitor. He's not robed in dramatic crimson or shadowy black. He wears the plain garb of a man who does not need costume to instill terror. His eyes flicker with professional curiosity, like a butcher examining a particularly stubborn piece of meat. The scribe is already seated, quill poised, parchment unfurled. You're invited, again so polite, to sit. The Inquisitor begins softly, gently even. This is not an interrogation, he assures you. No, this is an opportunity, a chance to unburden your soul, to embrace the mercy of the Church, to confess any errors of thought or practice so that you may be cleansed and restored to the flock. The words are honeyed, the tone pastoral. The trap is already sprung, because here is the genius of it. You are not being asked whether you are guilty. You are being asked what you are guilty of. The Inquisitor proceeds from the assumption that guilt is a given. After all, why else would you be here? Innocence is not an answer. It is a deflection, a refusal to cooperate. And refusal, as you have already learned, is the surest path to the harsher measures you have thus far only glimpsed from afar. So you sit paralysed between 2 equally fatal choices. To confess is to incriminate yourself. To deny is to brand yourself obstinate and unrepentant. There is no third door, no clever escape, and the Inquisitor is in no hurry. He speaks of sin, of the frailty of human nature, of the infinite patience of God, and not incidentally of the very finite patience of the tribunal. Time stretches like a rack, though you're not yet bound to one. Yet, you will be encouraged to begin small. A harmless omission, a forgotten ritual, a moment of doubt. Surely you can admit to that. Everyone has such moments. Everyone is tempted. A minor confession now will be seen as a sign of your good faith, of your willingness to cooperate, of your desire to return to grace. And once you yield that first scrap, the net tightens. If you admit to missing a mass, why not admit to improper prayers? If you admit to improper prayers, surely you once entertained heretical thoughts. And if heretical thoughts, well, it is only a short step to heretical acts. The Inquisitor leads you gently down this path step by step, like a shepherd guiding a lamb to the slaughterhouse. And you follow, because to stop is to be branded a liar. And liars, as everyone knows, require harsher correction. All the while, the scribe writes, every word, every pause, every stammer is recorded for posterity, or perhaps merely for your sentencing. You cannot see what is written. You cannot object to the phrasing. The record will stand as truth. And when, not if, you're confronted with it later, any contradiction will be used to prove your duplicity. You're weaving the noose with your own words, and every thread tightens it further. Of course, you might think to remain silent, to refuse confession entirely, and in theory, this is your right. But in practice, silence is itself a confession of guilt in this chamber. The Inquisitor will smile sadly, nod, and inform you that refusal indicates a hardened heart, that it is evidence of willful heresy, that, alas, sterner measures will now be necessary to bring about your repentance. And those measures, well, you have heard the screams through the walls. You know what comes next. In the end, most do confess. Not because they are guilty, but because the structure of the process ensures that guilt will be found, or created. A confession obtained under duress is no less damning than one given freely. In fact, it is often more useful, as it can be used to implicate others, for that too will be asked of you. Who else harbours such doubts? Who led you astray? Who whispered heresies in your ear? And here lies the final cruelty. The longer you resist naming names, the more you confirm your own guilt. You will be offered the chance to save yourself, or at least to delay your doom by betraying others. And if you think you can protect them by remaining silent, you are mistaken. The Inquisitors already know their names. They want your confirmation to seal the case. When at last you're led back to your cell, you're not relieved. You're not safe. You are merely in limbo. The record of your confession, or your refusal, now exists, and it will shape everything that follows. You lie on the cold stone, stomach churning, mind racing, haunted by the words you spoke and those you withheld. You thought confession might offer absolution. It does not. It offers only another layer to the ever-thickening file that now defines your existence. Sleep, if it comes, will be thin and fractured. You know that tomorrow, or the day after, you will be summoned again, and the next trap will be waiting. If you have spent any time pondering how one lands in the claws of the Inquisition, you must also ponder the creatures who feed it. Chief among them is Don Osvaldo, or rather the many Don Osvaldos scattered across Spain. His name may change, his face may shift, but his type remains eternal. He is not a grand inquisitor, he is not a zealous friar. No, Don Osvaldo is something far more dangerous, a professional accuser, a man whose livelihood and petty satisfaction depend upon the ruin of others, and today, your ruin is his entertainment. Don Osvaldo presents himself to the world as a respectable citizen, a man of means, a man of influence, a man who knows people, and more importantly knows things about people. He dresses well, if a little ostentatiously, and makes a point of attending every public mass in the front pew. His genuflections are deep, his prayers loud and pious. His eyes, however, never close in devotion. They remain wide open, scanning the congregation for the next hint of heresy. A poorly executed sign of the cross, a glance exchanged with an undesirable, a child who fidgets too much during the sermon. Don Osvaldo sees it all, and he remembers. Of course, it would be slanderous to suggest that he profits from these observations. Perish the thought. But one cannot help noticing that Don Osvaldo's debts to certain merchants seem to vanish after a few well-timed denunciations, or that his business rivals have an uncanny tendency to receive unexpected summons from the Holy Office, or that widows with desirable property find themselves entangled in heresy trials shortly after declining his courtship. Coincidence, surely? The Lord works in mysterious ways, and so does Don Osvaldo. He writes his accusations with great care. His penmanship is impeccable. The phrasing is artful. It is with great reluctance and sorrow that I report. For the good of the faith I cannot remain silent. He does not accuse out of malice, you understand. He accuses out of duty, out of love for the Church, out of an abundance of caution. and because he knows exactly how to phrase things so that the Inquisitor's ears perk up. A vague accusation is gold. I have heard it said. There are rumours that some have observed. Such statements require no proof, only repetition. And repetition is Don Osvaldo's specialty, nor does he confine himself to letters. Oh no. He visits the offices of the Holy Office regularly, always politely, always deferential, bearing gifts, a fine bottle of wine, a basket of figs, a rare manuscript donated to the Inquisitor's private collection. These offerings are not bribes, of course. They are gestures of friendship. And when in casual conversation he happens to mention that so-and-so failed to kneel during the consecration last Sunday, well, that is simply a concerned citizen doing his part. It would be comforting to imagine that the Inquisitors see through him, that they tire of his constant stream of petty grievances. But alas, the Inquisition thrives on information, and Don Osvaldo provides it in abundance. True, many of his denunciations lead nowhere, but some do, and those that do become fuel for the tribunal's fire and for Don Osvaldo's reputation. He is known as a loyal servant of the faith, a vigilant guardian of orthodoxy, and woe betide anyone who crosses him. You, it seems, have crossed him, perhaps unknowingly, perhaps through some slight that barely registered at the time. A word, a glance, a business transaction that did not favour him. No matter. The letter was written. The wheels began to turn, and now here you are, languishing in a cell while Don Osvaldo sips fine sherry and chuckles to himself over supper. And should you emerge from this ordeal, scarred, impoverished, humiliated, do not expect an apology. Don Osvaldo will greet you warmly in public, hand on heart, eyes brimming with false concern. I am so relieved to see you freed, my friend. These terrible misunderstandings, how tragic they are. And behind his smile, the calculation continues. For Don Osvaldo knows what you do not. The Inquisition's files are never closed. Another accusation, another whisper, another letter, and you could be back in the cell before the next feast day. Don Osvaldo will make certain of it. After all, vigilance is a virtue. By now, you might imagine the Inquisition to be a furnace of fire and zealotry, a place of dramatic conversions and searing revelations. You would be wrong. It is a wheel. A great creaking bureaucratic wheel, slow to turn but relentless once in motion. And once your name has entered its spokes, you will find no easy exit. You may not be burned, you may not be tortured, but you will be processed. And the process, dear friend, is its own particular flavour of torment. The machinery begins with your file, that thickening dossier of half-truths and whole lies, lovingly compiled by scribes who seem to derive genuine joy from cataloguing human frailty. Every word you utter, every glance you cast, every twitch of a malnourished muscle is recorded and cross-referenced. Somewhere a clerk is already comparing your statements against those of Don Osvaldo and a dozen other helpful informants, each eager to see your head upon a metaphorical platter. The clerks are tireless, and why wouldn't they be? They are not the ones shivering on stone floors or contemplating the nutritional value of rat. They work by candlelight, fueled by ink, gossip, and an unhealthy fondness for procedure. And oh, the procedures. You'd perhaps imagined your fate would be decided in a single grand trial, a dramatic confrontation worthy of song. No. Instead, you will be shuffled through an endless series of hearings, interviews, cross-examinations, and committee reviews. Each one produces more paper, more notes, more opportunities to contradict yourself. If you said you attended Mass on St. Bartholomew's Day, but the parish records suggest you were ill, why then inconsistency? If you claimed never to have met a certain bookseller, yet your neighbour recalls seeing you near his shop, another inconsistency. The wheel turns, the gears grind, and with each pass your chances grow thinner. The beauty, if one may use that word, of the inquisitorial bureaucracy is its ability to manufacture guilt from the most mundane details. Did you light fewer candles this year than last? Were your donations to the church slightly reduced? Were you absent from the Corpus Christi procession? The ledger says yes, and the ledger is never wrong. You are perhaps an imperfect Catholic. An imperfection, in this system, is a foot in the door for heresy. The inquisitors need not prove monstrous crimes. They need only demonstrate patterns, trends, suggestions of deviation, and by the time they are done assembling the pieces, even you may begin to wonder if you are in fact guilty after all. Meanwhile, your file circulates. From scribe to scribe, from minor friar to senior inquisitor, Each adds notes, annotations, helpful suggestions for further inquiry. It is not uncommon for cases to linger in this stage for weeks, months, even years. You will not know this, of course. You will sit in your cell watching mould grow on damp stone as the wheel turns unseen. From time to time, a new inquisitor will appear, asking the same questions in a slightly different tone, feigning ignorance of previous sessions. They are not ignorant. They are probing for new cracks, a single slip, a misplaced word, and the wheel lurches forward with fresh momentum. You may wonder why the process is so slow. Surely if the Church wished to cleanse the land of heresy, it would act swiftly. But you misunderstand the purpose. The Inquisition does not seek efficiency. It seeks spectacle. It seeks an outcome so irrefutable, so thoroughly documented that none may question its verdict. And for that, time is an ally. A long, grinding process wears down resistance. Prisoners who might have held firm through a single brutal interrogation often break under the weight of endless bureaucracy. Days blur, memories fade, hope withers, and when at last the sentence is pronounced, it comes not as a thunderbolt, but as a weary inevitability. You will almost be grateful for the certainty. And through it all, the scribes continue to write. More paper, more ink, more files to be stored in the vast archives of the Holy Office, where they will gather dust for centuries long after your bones have moulded. The wheel never stops. It cannot stop. Too many careers, too many reputations, too many egos depend upon its ceaseless turning. You're no longer a person, you're a case, and the case must be processed, however long it takes. And so you sit, another nameless cog caught in the grinding wheel of inquisitorial justice. The guards change, the inquisitors rotate, the scribes sharpen new quills, and the wheel turns on. Whether you survive its turning is, at this point, almost irrelevant. What matters is that the machine continues to function. After all, what is a little human suffering compared to the smooth operation of holy bureaucracy? If by this point you still cling to the quaint notion that you will stand before a noble court, plead your case with eloquence, and sway your judges with reason. Allow me to disabuse you of such dangerous optimism. Judicial sessions within the Spanish Inquisition are not trials in the sense that you understand them. They are theatre. Very bad theatre, mind you, performed by bureaucrats in robes whose idea of suspense is whether you will soil yourself before or after the verdict is delivered. You're not an actor in this production. You are the prop, the scenery, the bit of tragic colour to be carted on stage, displayed and removed as needed. You will not be informed when your session is to occur. That would grant you the luxury of preparation. Instead, you will be roused without warning, likely after another night of sleepless contemplation, punctuated by the squeaks of overfed rats. The guards will offer no explanation as they drag you through the labyrinthine corridors toward the chamber. The less you know, the more off balance you will be. This is by design. A disoriented prisoner stammers. A stammer is noted. Notes become evidence. The wheel turns. The judicial chamber itself is a disappointment if you were expecting Gothic grandeur. No soaring arches, no blazing torches, just a plain room with a plain table where the inquisitors sit in plain chairs. 3 of them, if you're fortunate. More, if your case has attracted particular interest. Though you would do well not to flatter yourself. The inquisitors are not here for your drama. They are here to work through their caseload. You are item number 7 on the docket, sandwiched between a suspected Judaizer and an illiterate peasant who allegedly prayed to the wrong saint. Efficiency is key. Compassion is not on the agenda. You will notice one striking absence. A defence. You do not have a lawyer. You do not have an advocate. You may speak on your own behalf, of course, assuming you enjoy making things worse for yourself. The inquisitors already have your confession, or your refusals, or a carefully edited summary of both. The scribes have compiled witness statements, many anonymous, all conveniently damning. Your voice, hoarse from days of cold and fear, will scarcely carry weight against such a chorus of holy certainty. And if you think logic will save you, that pointing out contradictions or absurdities in the accusations will somehow restore your good name, then you clearly have not been paying attention. Logic is heresy's favourite tool, and the inquisitors know it. The more you reason, the guiltier you appear. The session will begin with formalities, a reading of the charges, which may or may not bear any resemblance to your lived experience. Did you question the doctrine of transubstantiation? Perhaps you merely asked why the wine always tasted sour. No matter. Question asked. Heresy implied. Charge recorded. The Inquisitors will allow you to respond, but beware. Every word you utter will be dissected with the enthusiasm of a bored butcher. Tone is everything. A hint of sarcasm, contempt for the church, a tremble in your voice, guilt made manifest, a too calm demeanour, evidence of a hardened soul beyond redemption. You cannot win this game. You can only hope to lose slowly. The Inquisitors themselves are a varied lot. Some are genuinely devout men who believe they are saving your soul, albeit by methods that would make demons blush. Others are careerists, climbing the ecclesiastical ladder on a staircase built of ruined lives. A few are simply bored, finding grim amusement in the theatre of human degradation. Their questions will come swiftly, designed to confuse and provoke. They will interrupt you. They will demand clarifications, then twist your clarifications into new accusations. They will feign surprise at your ignorance of obscure theological points, then cite your ignorance as further proof of heretical leanings. You will scarcely finish one answer before being confronted with the next insinuation. And all the while, the scribe's quill scratches on, immortalizing your every stumble. Do not imagine that your session will end with a verdict. Oh no, that would be merciful, and the Inquisition does not deal in mercy. The Inquisitors will conclude with vague statements. Your case requires further review. More witnesses must be consulted. Additional theological experts will weigh in. You will be escorted back to your cell none the wiser, nerves frayed, mind racing, stomach churning. And there you will remain, awaiting the next session, and the next, and the next. Judicial proceedings can drag on for months, even years, because heresy is a complex matter, and because bureaucratic wheels, as you have learned, turn exceedingly slow. And when at last the verdict is delivered, it will come not as a dramatic pronouncement but as a simple notification. You will not be present when the Inquisitors deliberate. You will not hear the votes cast. You will be informed in due course of your sentence. And whether it is penance, imprisonment, or something far more final, you will understand one thing clearly. The sessions were never about determining your innocence. They were about crafting the justification for your punishment. The theatre is for the audience, the record, the history books. You, my unfortunate friend, were never more than set dressing. You might have held out some faint hope that when the time came to face your accusers, you would at least be granted the dignity of seeing their faces. Perhaps some stern rival from the marketplace, some bitter cousin with a long memory for petty slights, someone tangible, someone you could confront, refute, or at the very least curse under your breath. How charmingly naive. In the Spanish Inquisition, the witnesses are as spectral as the truth itself, anonymous, untouchable, unchallengeable, and utterly fatal to your case. When next you're dragged to another of those delightful judicial sessions, the Inquisitors will inform you with great solemnity that multiple witnesses have come forward regarding your heretical behaviour. They will not tell you who these witnesses are. They will not tell you when or where they observed your supposed transgressions. You will be presented only with summaries, carefully worded, dripping with insinuation, impossible to rebut. It has been reported that the accused was seen in conversation with known Judaizers. It is said that the accused expressed doubts regarding the Holy Mother Church. Witnesses recall that the accused did not appear suitably devout during the procession of St. James. Witnesses recall? Which witnesses? How many? When? Where? You will not be told. The anonymity is for their protection, you see. It would be unthinkable to expose these pious souls to retaliation from the likes of you, a person already drowning in suspicion. Of course, the beauty of anonymous testimony is that it requires no proof. A grudge-bearing neighbour can claim to have overheard you uttering blasphemy through the thin walls of your home. An illiterate stable boy can swear he saw you consorting with Moors beneath the full moon. A rival merchant might remember you handling a suspicious foreign text. None of these statements need withstand scrutiny, because there will be no scrutiny. The Inquisitors will treat them with the same reverence they afford Holy Writ. After all, what reason would good Christians have to lie? And should you suggest that these unknown accusers might in fact have personal motives, envy, spite, the promise of reward, you will merely confirm their suspicions. To question the integrity of the process is itself a mark of guilt, and do not imagine that the witnesses are confined to the living. The Inquisition has a fine tradition of accepting posthumous testimony. If a dead man's diary is found with a casual mention of your name in an unfortunate context, that too will be presented. A letter, a scrawled note, an overheard conversation repeated through a chain of 5 or 6 intermediaries. It all finds its way into your file, as solid as stone and twice as heavy. The Inquisitors will nod gravely and record your reactions to each new revelation. Did you pale? Did you blink too rapidly? Did you stammer? More evidence. More ink on the page. In some particularly baroque cases, prisoners have been confronted with witness statements that were entirely fabricated, designed not for truth, but to provoke a reaction. A clever trick. If you deny something too vehemently, why perhaps you protest too much. If you do not deny it at all, perhaps you hope to escape unnoticed. Either way, the Inquisitors are pleased. They will smile and note your response accordingly. You will find yourself condemned by words from lips you will never see, from faces you will never confront. It is a game played in the dark, and you are blindfolded from the first move. And should you imagine, in some fit of legalistic fancy, that you might petition to face these witnesses, to demand their names, to cross-examine their claims, well, prepare for the loudest, most condescending lecture on the sanctity of the process you have yet heard. Only a fool, or worse, a hardened heretic, would dare impugn the integrity of the Holy Office. You will be reminded that the anonymity of witnesses protects not only their lives, but the very soul of Christendom, and that by even asking such a question, you have cast doubt upon your own contrition. Congratulations! Your Inquisitor's notes now contain the helpful phrase, "shows rebellious tendencies." Back in your cell, you will stew over this maddening injustice. You will turn it over in your mind until it festers. Who accused you? The neighbour whose cat you kicked? The rival shopkeeper you undercut on a shipment of figs? That simpering Don Osvaldo? The possibilities multiply until every face becomes suspect, and that too serves the Inquisition's purpose. Paranoia isolates. It breaks bonds. It breeds the hopeless resignation they so prize. When you can no longer trust your own memories, much less your fellow man, you become ripe for confession. Any confession, to anyone, just to end the grinding uncertainty. And thus, the anonymous chorus continues to sing, unseen and unchallenged. You remain the only visible actor in this grotesque drama, alone beneath the Inquisitor's gaze. Your unseen accusers whisper from the shadows, and each new whisper brings you closer to the inevitable end. Sleep well, if you can. You will never know how many ghosts speak against you. You would think that after a full day of spiritual reflection in your charming stone suite, the Inquisitors might allow you the small mercy of an undisturbed night. You would think wrong. Evening, you soon learn, is prime time for interrogation. By day, the wheels of bureaucracy grind slowly through their endless paperwork. But as night falls and the corridors grow colder, the Inquisitors become strangely invigorated. Perhaps it is the candlelight. Perhaps it is the thrill of watching a sleep-starved prisoner unravel beneath their polite smiles. Either way, when the guards appear at your cell after sunset, you know exactly what awaits. Another round in the theatre of confession. The ritual begins the same each time. The guards offer no explanation, merely gestures. You're led through winding passages lit by flickering torches, the shadows dancing on damp stone like mocking phantoms. The chill bites through your threadbare tunic, and your bare feet slap against the floor with every uneven step. The air is thick with the scent of burning tallow and something more pungent. Old fear, perhaps, or the ghosts of previous interrogations. If such ghosts exist, they are surely well fed here. The interrogation chamber is unchanged, though your perception of it warps with each visit. The plain table, the blank walls, the ever-watchful scribe, all familiar, yet newly sinister in the gloom of night. The Inquisitor, too, seems altered, less the kindly shepherd of your earlier sessions, more a spider in his web, fingers steepled, eyes gleaming with anticipation. He welcomes you with a tone that borders on affable, as if you were an honoured guest at a particularly unpleasant dinner party. You're offered no seat this time. Standing keeps you attentive, they say. Alert, more receptive to divine truth, or to exhaustion-induced blunders. The questions begin softly, almost conversational. How are you feeling? Have you had time to reflect? Are there any sins you wish to confess tonight? A kind offer, to be sure. Declining, of course, is a dangerous game. You must choose your words carefully, balancing the appearance of humility with the need to avoid fabricating crimes you cannot later explain. Too eager, and you are clearly attempting to curry favour. Too hesitant, and you are concealing deeper guilt. It is a conversational minefield, and the Inquisitor knows the path far better than you do. As the hour drags on, the tone shifts. The questions become more pointed. Specific names, specific dates, details you have already answered and will now answer again under a different light. Any discrepancy, however slight, will be seized upon as evidence of deceit. Fatigue gnaws at your mind, blurring the edges of memory. Did you say the procession was in June or July? Was it Don Francisco or Don Fernando you spoke to in the market? The more you strain to recall, the more suspicious you appear. After all, a truly faithful soul would remember such things perfectly, would they not? And the Inquisitor is patient, infinitely patient. He knows that fatigue is his greatest ally. The later the hour, the more brittle your resolve. The longer you stand, the more your knees tremble, the more your stomach growls, the harder it is to concentrate. And should you falter, should you sway or stammer or misspeak, the scribe's quill scratches gleefully, preserving your failure for posterity. You will not be told when the session will end. Time ceases to exist here. Minutes blur into hours, hours into timeless suffering. The candles burn low, casting long shadows that seem to stretch and leer. And sometimes, of course, they do not rely on words alone. The chamber may be empty save for inquisitors and scribes, or it may not. Certain implements rest quietly in the corners, their presence unspoken yet understood. The inquisitors need not touch them. Their mere presence is often enough. A glance toward the ropes, the iron manacles, the ominously stained table, and your imagination supplies the rest. Fear, after all, is more pliable than flesh, and much cheaper to repair. When at last you return to your cell, it is with no sense of relief. Your legs barely carry you. Your throat is raw from forced civility. Your mind buzzes with half-formed doubts. Did you say too much? Too little? Did the Inquisitor's smile mean he was satisfied, or merely amused at how close you are to breaking? You do not know. You cannot know. And that uncertainty is by far the sharpest blade in their arsenal. Sleep, needless to say, eludes you. You lie on the cold stone, heart racing, eyes wide in the dark. Every creak of a distant door, every echoing footfall down the corridor might herald the next summons. You cannot relax. You cannot escape. The night belongs to the Inquisitors, and dawn offers no reprieve. There will be more evenings, more questions, more chances to fail. In the Spanish Inquisition, the day may bring bureaucratic dread, but the night belongs to true terror. And tomorrow, the game begins anew. By now you may have grown accustomed to the subtler tools of the Inquisition. The anonymous accusations, the endless bureaucracy, the cheerful gaslighting disguised as pastoral care. But these are only the opening acts. There comes a point, and rest assured, for most prisoners it comes, when words alone no longer suffice. When mere exhaustion and fear of parchment lose their edge, the Inquisitors turn to more, tangible encouragements. Enter the instruments of fear, a collection of devices whose very presence in the chamber is enough to loosen tongues and unhinge minds. And if presence fails, well, they are not merely decorative. The first you will likely encounter is the pulley. Such a humble device, a rope, a wheel, a few iron rings, hardly seems threatening, until you find yourself hoisted aloft by your own wrists, arms wrenched behind your back at unnatural angles, your body stretched until joints pop and sinews scream. The Inquisitors, of course, will explain that this is not torture. It is a corrective posture, intended to encourage clarity of thought. The scribe, seated comfortably nearby, will continue to take notes, occasionally glancing up to see whether you have remembered any new sins worth confessing. If you are lucky, the session ends before your shoulders permanently dislocate. If not, well, who needs symmetrical arms when one's soul is at stake? Then there is the rack, the grand old cliché of medieval horror. And cliché for a reason, it works. The beauty of the rack is its simplicity. You're tied down, you're stretched, slowly, deliberately, inch by agonizing inch. The bones of your back grind against one another. Ligaments tear like old cloth. The Inquisitors assure you this is for your benefit, to help purge the stubbornness from your heart. The scribe dutifully records every fresh scream, every renewed plea for mercy, a useful soundtrack for future sessions, and a clear signal to other prisoners of what awaits the uncooperative. Of course, not every instrument is grand in scale. The humble corders, thin ropes used to bind fingers, wrists and ankles so tightly they cut into flesh, are a favourite for those moments when a full-body spectacle seems excessive. A skilled inquisitor can reduce a man to weeping incoherence with nothing more than a few loops of rough twine and a practiced hand. The resulting damage is less dramatic than the rack, but far more sustainable. After all, there are many confessions to extract, and the inquisitors prefer their subjects conscious enough to provide a good show. And then there is water. So clean, so innocent, so utterly terrifying when poured down your throat while you're bound and helpless. The so-called toka, or water torture, is a masterpiece of controlled drowning. Cloth is stuffed into your mouth and water poured relentlessly until your body convulses in panic, convinced it is about to die. You will thrash. You will beg. You will confess to anything. Witchcraft, heresy, speaking ill of the Pope's cooking, if only they will stop. And when they do stop, it is not because they believe you. It is because there will be another round, and another, until your words match their script. You may wonder why such methods are permitted. After all, are they not acts of cruelty condemned by the Church? Here is the delightful irony. They are not classified as torture. No, they are moderate pressure, designed to assist the penitent in recalling the truth. And should you perish beneath such pressure, well, clearly your soul was already forfeit. The records will state that you succumbed to natural causes, and the inquisitors will mourn your stubbornness with the appropriate degree of solemnity. And let us not forget the psychological instruments, the whispers in the dark, the cries of fellow prisoners echoing down the stone halls, the calculated delays between sessions designed to leave you stewing in dread, the sudden kindness of a jailer offering a crust of bread or a kind word, just to soften you for the next round of questioning. The inquisitors know that the mind breaks long before the body, and they are artists in the medium of mental disintegration. By the time you return to your cell after your first true session with the instruments of fear, you will no longer wonder whether to confess. You will wonder only what to confess and how quickly. The distinction between guilt and innocence will seem quaint, a philosophical debate for those not dangling from ropes or gasping beneath a sodden rag. You will understand at last why so many confess to the most absurd of charges, not because they believe, because they need it to stop. And as you lie trembling in the dark, every creak of the corridor, every clink of iron, will remind you that the instruments are always waiting. Faith is eternal, and so is the wheel of fear. One might imagine that in a system so adept at breaking bodies and minds, the last thing you would encounter is a doctor. And yet, here they are, the inquisitorial physicians, not healers in the conventional sense, not men devoted to restoring health or easing suffering. No, their role is far more practical. Their task is not to cure you. It is to ensure you remain alive and sufficiently intact to endure further questioning. After all, a dead heretic confesses nothing, and the spectacle of a trial loses some of its luster when the accused arrives in multiple pieces. The doctor is summoned not out of compassion, but out of necessity. Before each session of moderate pressure, he conducts a cheerful little inspection. No white robes or soothing bedside manner here. Think more butcher's apron than healer's garb. He will prod your ribs, pinch your skin, check your pulse with fingers cold as the stone beneath you. He may murmur a few Latin phrases that sound vaguely medical but are mostly for show. What he seeks is not wellness, but limits. How far can this particular body be pushed before it breaks irreparably? A professional curiosity, nothing more. You're a specimen to be tested, a sack of bones to be calibrated for optimal yield. If he finds you too weak, say, your pulse is thready, your skin clammy, your eyes sunken from too many nights of sleepless terror, he may recommend a delay. Not out of mercy, of course, out of pragmatism. A prisoner who dies mid-interrogation is an administrative headache, requiring explanations and, worse, paperwork. Better to let you recover just enough to scream properly when the time comes. You may be given a little broth, perhaps a crust of less mouldy bread, a day or two of lighter treatment. Not kindness, maintenance, like oiling the gears of a well-used machine. And should you survive the more enthusiastic sessions with ropes and racks, the doctor will reappear, not with balm or comfort, but with cold, assessing eyes. He will examine your dislocated joints, your torn ligaments, your bruised and battered flesh, not to heal, but to certify. Yes, this one can endure another round. Perhaps with adjustments, perhaps with a gentler approach, or perhaps not. The doctor's report goes straight into your ever-thickening file, a clinical footnote to your ongoing spiritual journey. Of course, inquisitorial doctors are not drawn from the cream of the medical profession. The truly talented healers tend to avoid careers that involve more breaking than mending. Those who serve the Holy Office are a particular breed, men fascinated by the limits of human endurance, untroubled by outdated notions of ethics. Many have dabbled in alchemy, some have an unhealthy interest in anatomy. All are perfectly at home in a system where the Hippocratic Oath has been quietly replaced by a mandate to do no harm to the process. And should you beg them for relief, a poultice, a salve, a simple bandage, you will likely be met with a thin smile and the reassuring promise that your soul is in far greater need of healing than your body, which is a fine sentiment, right up until your shoulder pops back out of place at the next questioning. And let us not forget their role as witnesses. A doctor's certification that a prisoner was fit for interrogation is worth its weight in gold should the family later complain of mistreatment. Should you die, gasping and broken, beneath the instruments of fear, the official record will reflect that you were deemed healthy prior to the session. The Inquisitors are nothing if not thorough in covering their tracks, and the doctors are eager collaborators. After all, a dead prisoner is inconvenient, but a dead prisoner with clean paperwork, entirely acceptable. So when next the doctor enters your cell, do not be foolish enough to hope. His presence does not herald respite, it heralds readiness. You are not being healed. You are being preserved, a slightly damaged, thoroughly terrified vessel from which the Inquisitors intend to squeeze the last drops of confession. And when you are dragged once more into the flickering torchlight, body trembling, mind unravelling, you will understand this truth in your very bones, assuming, of course, that they remain unbroken. By this stage, you have learned that survival in the Spanish Inquisition is less a matter of faith and more a matter of memory. Not lofty theological memory. No one cares whether you can recite St. Augustine from heart. No, what the Inquisitors now demand is perfect, exhaustive recollection of every moment of your sorry existence. Dates, names, conversations, passing remarks, what colour shoes you wore to Mass 5 years ago, all must be retrieved from the fog of your battered mind and presented with flawless consistency, because now comes the phase of remembering everything. And God help you if your memory should prove, as human memory inevitably does, a touch unreliable. The summons comes again. Another twilight shuffle down cold corridors, another seat before the ever-smirking Inquisitor and his bloodless scribe. But this time, the tone is different. Less prodding, more expectant. You're not here to be asked whether you are guilty. That much has already been decided. You're here to assist in constructing the proper narrative, a narrative that will satisfy the tribunal, entertain the crowd, and bolster the reputation of those in charge. The Inquisitor leans forward, eyes gleaming, and begins to recount your previous confessions, or at least the version recorded in your file. And now you must remember everything you said, every word, every phrasing, because one misstep will see the entire edifice crumble atop your head. It begins innocuously enough. You mentioned last week that you conversed with Don Pedro in the marketplace regarding certain books. Which books precisely? You hesitate. Of course you hesitate, because there was no Don Pedro, no conversation, no books. But you must now conjure these fictions convincingly, in perfect alignment with the Inquisitor's expectations. Invent too little, and you appear evasive. Invent too much, and you contradict the file. Congratulations. You have entered the creative writing portion of your Inquisition, where the penalty for poor storytelling is extended suffering, and it escalates. You admitted to hearing unorthodox prayers at the home of Maria de la Cruz. Who else was present? You rack your weary brain. Maria de la Cruz? The name is unfamiliar. Did you confess to such a thing? The Inquisitor assures you that you did. The scribe's notes say so. Therefore, it is true. And now you must supply the missing details, names, faces, context. Under the burning gaze of the Inquisitor, with the scratch-scratch of the scribe's quill setting your teeth on edge, you begin to invent, slowly, painfully, aware that each lie must be maintained across future sessions. The web grows ever more tangled, and with each thread your hope phrase thinner, and always the refrain, remember everything. Not simply what they have told you confess to, but everything adjacent, everything implied. They will circle back to previous statements without warning, pouncing on inconsistencies with unholy glee. If last week you said the meeting took place in May, and today you say June, guilt. If one day you name 3 accomplices and the next 4, guilt. If you cannot recall the precise words of the supposed heretical chant, guilt. The human mind, under such strain, becomes a trap of its own making. You will stumble. You will contradict yourself. The Inquisitors know this. They count on it. And should you falter too obviously, they have ways to refresh your memory. A return visit to the pulley, a little more waterboard artistry, a private consultation with the physician to determine how much more you can endure. And when next you're dragged back to the chamber, dripping, broken, barely coherent, you will find your memory vastly improved, or so they will insist. And if you still fail to produce the required recollections, well, there are always more persuasive methods at hand. The process is self-reinforcing. The more you confess, the more you must remember. The more you remember, the more inconsistencies arise. The more inconsistencies arise, the more pressure is applied. Around and around you spin, dizzy with terror, sick with fatigue, praying for release that will not come. And the darkest irony, even perfect memory will not save you. Even if, by some miracle, you manage to repeat every fabricated detail with robotic precision, the Inquisitors can always claim that your consistency proves rehearsed deception. A too smooth confession is no more trustworthy than a stammering one. There is no winning move. You're damned either way, and you will know it. As you're dragged back to your cell, throat raw, mind in tatters, one truth will sear itself into your bones. In the Spanish Inquisition, remembering everything is not about truth. It is about survival, and even that is temporary at best. By now, if you have not yet grasped the grand performance that is the Spanish Inquisition, allow this next act to make it blindingly clear. The interrogation is not merely an extraction of truth. It is theatre, an elaborate grim pageant where roles are assigned, scripts are improvised, and the audience, though unseen, is always present. You, of course, are not the star. You are the tragic fool stumbling through each scene with bloodied feet, and a script that changes faster than your battered memory can keep pace. The Inquisitors? Why, they are the masterful directors, choreographing your descent with a flair that would make any dramatist weep with envy. Each session is staged with deliberate artistry. The room is prepared. Dim torchlight for atmosphere, the instruments of persuasion glistening ominously in the corners, the scribe's quill sharpened and poised. The Inquisitor enters last, with the calm gravity of a seasoned actor taking centre stage. His voice is carefully modulated, at first warm and coaxing to draw you in, to lull you into that fatal false sense of cooperation. But when the time is right, the tone shifts, stern, commanding, righteous fury incarnate. It is a performance, every note struck with intent, every pause calibrated for maximum dread. And the audience? Though not seated in rows, they are everywhere. The guards lurking at the edges, the scribes compiling your words, the unseen ranks of the tribunal who will later read your transcript with relish. You perform for them all. And the most exquisite irony, you too are expected to act, to play your part in this sordid drama. The role of the penitent heretic is well established. The proper mix of contrition and fear is required. Too bold, and you will be deemed defiant. Too meek, and you will be suspected of feigned innocence. You must cry at the right moments, tremble appropriately, gasp when the Inquisitor recounts your alleged sins. Fail to deliver this performance convincingly, and the scene will be extended, with additional props from the torture rack if necessary. The Inquisitors have all the time in the world, and they are tireless in their direction. The lines you speak are not truly your own. They have been shaped over countless interrogations. You will be prompted, guided, gently corrected when you stray from the desired narrative. Perhaps you forgot this detail. Surely it was Don Miguel you spoke to. Would you not agree that such words might be seen as heretical? And thus the script is filled in, line by painful line, until the play fits the expected arc. The confession must satisfy the demands of doctrine, spectacle, and precedent, a tidy package to present at the final auto da fe. You are, in essence, writing your own obituary with the help of men who know precisely how they want the story to end. And as the performance drags on, the wear and tear of repeated scenes begins to show. Your body sags, your voice cracks, your mind reels. Yet still the Inquisitor presses on, ever the consummate actor, unfazed by your deterioration. He knows this is the climactic act, the moment when the prisoner finally breaks, sobbing out a confession to crimes both real and imagined, ready to implicate neighbours, family, stray dogs, anyone to bring the curtain down. The scribe's quill dances with renewed vigour as each trembling admission is recorded, each new villain added to the growing cast. The play must be complete, and complete it shall be. even if it takes you to the brink of madness. And let us not forget the post-performance review. After each session, the Inquisitors convene in private to critique your performance, to plot the next scene, to decide which strings to pull tighter. They may chuckle over a particularly absurd confession, debate the theatrical timing of your final breakdown, or plan how best to parade your ruin before the faithful. The machinery of the Inquisition is not only relentless, it is theatrical to its very bones, and every cog delights in the grim spectacle it produces. And so, back in your cell, bruised, broken, and stripped of any lingering hope, you lie awake knowing this bitter truth. You were never meant to survive the theatre. You were meant to serve as the evening's entertainment, and whether you perish on stage or in the wings is, to the Inquisitors, a mere matter of dramaturgy. The play will go on. It always does. If you have thus far clung to the last scraps of dignity through endless interrogations and the delightful attentions of the inquisitorial doctors, prepare to lose even that, because sooner or later, and more likely sooner, the day comes when you are presented with your new attire, the heretic's costume. It is not merely clothing. It is a public announcement of your disgrace, a stitched confession worn for the world to see. You will not resist wearing it. You will not protest. At this point, resistance is laughable, and protest would only earn you new embellishments. You will don the costume because it has been decided that you will play this next role whether you like it or not. And so begins yet another act in the great theatre of the Inquisition. The centrepiece of this ensemble is the infamous San Benito, a shapeless tunic of coarse yellow cloth, designed with all the aesthetic charm of a potato sack and none of its warmth. Onto this lovely garment are painted bold symbols of your crime, flames naturally if you have been condemned to burning, crosses for lesser heresies, demons if the Inquisitors are feeling particularly theatrical. Sometimes your name is emblazoned for the benefit of the crowd, just in case anyone misses the point. You will wear this sack with pride, or rather, with trembling humiliation, as you are paraded before the faithful. And of course, no costume is complete without the hat. Enter the coraza, a towering paper headdress that manages to be both ridiculous and terrifying. Painted devils leer from its surface, flames lick around the edges, and at its peak some creative soul may have sketched your soul plummeting into hell. The hat is designed not only to degrade, but to impair. It wobbles with every step, forcing you to stoop and shuffle, presenting the perfect image of a heretic broken beneath the weight of divine judgment. The irony is delicious. After surviving the rack, the pulley, and the water, it is this absurd hat that finally forces your head to bow. And what of the rest of your appearance? You will not be permitted to prepare for this public debut. No baths. No fresh clothing beneath the San Benito. Your hair will be matted with sweat, your skin grey from weeks in the cell, your eyes hollowed by sleepless terror. All the better. The spectacle demands a suitably pitiable wretch. The crowd expects to see sin made flesh, and the Inquisitors intend to deliver. You will stink of fear and filth, and every step in your humiliating garb will be accompanied by the whispers, jeers, and occasional spit of the onlookers. You are now a living sermon on the price of heresy. And here is the most perverse twist. Not all who wear the San Benito are condemned to death. Some will be paraded as penitent sinners, released after sufficient public shaming. Though never truly free, their names forever linked to the garish costume they once wore. The San Benito becomes a permanent stain. In some towns, they hang them in churches as grim reminders. Imagine your name flapping in the breeze above the altar for the next century, a cautionary tale embroidered in yellow. Even in death, the costume outlives you. And for those less fortunate, those marked with flames, the parade ends not at a church but at the stake. There, before a baying crowd, the San Benito serves one final purpose: to identify the condemned until the fire consumes both fabric and flesh. Poetic in its own macabre way, the costume that stripped you of dignity in life now ensures that even in death you remain a spectacle, a lesson, a warning. The Inquisitors will watch with satisfaction, their work complete. The crowd will cheer, and somewhere a fresh San Benito will be stitched, ready for the next performance. So lie back in your cell tonight and contemplate this charming fate. You have confessed, you have wept, you have bled, and now you will wear the costume designed to display your shame to the world. In the Spanish Inquisition, repentance is not enough. You must be seen to repent, loudly, visibly, absurdly. And as the rough cloth scrapes your skin and the foolish hat wobbles on your brow, you will know one simple truth. dignity is not permitted here, only spectacle, and the show must go on. By now, you might be tempted to believe that the Spanish Inquisition is merely an unfortunate excess of religious zeal, an overzealous flock of clerics who simply love their paperwork a bit too much. But peel back the threadbare curtain, and what you will find is not merely faith, but power. Raw, grinding, unapologetic power. The Holy Office is not just saving souls, it is maintaining a stranglehold on the kingdom, one confession at a time. The church and the crown may appear as two pillars of Spanish life, but here, in this windowless cell, you learn that they are one and the same, and the Inquisition is their shared instrument. You're not the first to discover this. You will not be the last. Understand this. The Inquisition is a political machine, no less than a religious one. Its public sermons may thunder about heresy and the purity of the faith, but behind closed doors, the gears of state turn smoothly. The Holy Office serves the crown by silencing dissent, controlling thought, and providing a useful tool for removing troublesome subjects. A landowner unwilling to yield his estate, a merchant growing too influential, a noble family rumoured to harbour sympathies for the wrong faction. A single whispered accusation can solve these inconveniences most efficiently. The process is slow, yes, bureaucratic by nature, but inexorable. And unlike the rough justice of the mob, it is cloaked in divine legitimacy. What monarch would not appreciate such a tool? And the church? Oh, the church thrives. For every heretic burned, another tithe is collected. Properties are confiscated for the good of the faith, and somehow these lands and riches often find their way into the coffers of the clergy or their noble allies. The line between piety and profit is so blurred as to be invisible. It is no accident that inquisitors often emerge from the process with well-fed purses and expanded estates. After all, saving souls is expensive work. Who better to fund it than the very heretics they so graciously prosecute? But the true brilliance of the system lies in its ability to maintain fear. The Inquisition does not need to execute every accused. It need not even arrest most suspects. The mere presence of the Holy Office, the whispered stories of midnight arrests, the looming threat of the auto da fe, these are sufficient to ensure obedience. No bishop could dream of a more effective method of controlling the flock. No king could ask for a more loyal populace. And the fact that the church gets to parade itself as the guardian of truth and virtue while engaging in these machinations, well, that is simply an added delight. Even the inquisitors themselves are not immune to this dance of power. Many are appointed through networks of patronage, their careers built on political alliances as much as theological acumen. The ones who rise fastest are not necessarily the most pious, though they wear the mask of piety with skill, but the most adept at navigating the web of favours and rivalries that underpins the Inquisition. They understand that every confession extracted is not merely a spiritual victory, but a political move. Every name added to the rolls is another demonstration of the Holy Office's indispensability to both throne and altar. And you, poor fool, caught in this grand machinery, are nothing more than a convenient cog. Whether you are truly heretical is irrelevant. Whether you are guilty matters not at all. You are useful. Your trial serves to remind the populace of the Inquisition's reach. Your parade in the San Benito reinforces the spectacle of obedience. Your property, once seized, funds future prosecutions. And should your execution be deemed necessary, it will serve as a potent example to others. You are, in every sense, an offering to the twin gods of church and power. So as you sit in your cell, awaiting the next act of this grim pageant, remember this. You are not here because the church cares deeply about your soul. You are here because the church and the crown beside it cares deeply about its grip on the world outside these walls. And as long as the fires of fear burn bright, those in power will sleep soundly, while heretics like you provide the fuel. And now, the grand finale, the auto da fe. If you thought that the true punishment of the Inquisition lay in its dungeons or its instruments of fear, think again. All of that, the cells, the interrogations, the humiliations, the weeks or months of calculated degradation, was merely the prelude. The true spectacle is public. After all, what good is a warning if it goes unseen? The auto da fe, or act of faith, is theatre on a grand scale. The final act of the inquisitorial pageant where heretics are paraded, judged, and if deemed necessary, flambéed for the greater glory of God. You, of course, will play your part. Your costume has been prepared. Your confession, scripted and edited for public consumption, has been carefully recorded. You're no longer merely a prisoner, you're an exhibit, a living object lesson for the faithful. The day begins early, with the city buzzing like a festival, and why not? For many, the auto-da-fe is the highlight of the season. Vendors hawk roasted chestnuts and sugared almonds. Children run laughing through the streets. Noble families take up prime seats, eager to witness both divine justice and excellent pageantry. It is, in short, a jolly good day out. Provided, of course, you're not the one in yellow. You, meanwhile, will be dragged from your cell at dawn. No breakfast, naturally. Heretics do not require nourishment, only spectacle. You will be marched through the streets under heavy guard, clutching whatever tatters remain of your dignity beneath the San Benito and the absurd towering hat. The crowds jeer. Some pelt you with rotten fruit or worse. Others cross themselves fervently lest your sins prove contagious. You shuffle forward, legs weak, stomach churning. The bright sunlight a cruel contrast to the darkness you have lived in for so long. At the appointed square, often the largest in the city, a grand stage awaits. Rows of inquisitors in full regalia sit in judgment, flanked by soldiers and clerics. Before them stands the pulpit from which the charges will be read, and beyond it the stakes, both literal and figurative, of the day's proceedings. You're not alone in this performance. Dozens of fellow heretics stand with you, ranging from suspected witches to unfortunate conversos, from scholars who ask the wrong questions to peasants whose neighbours bore grudges. The variety only adds spice to the spectacle. No one is safe. Everyone is watching. The ceremony begins with a sermon, long, ponderous, dripping with righteous fervour. The sins of the condemned are detailed in lurid terms. Your confessions, artfully edited for maximum outrage, are read aloud. If you were foolish enough to confess to consorting with demons, expect the tale to be embellished with delightful flourishes. The goal is simple: to horrify, to titillate, and to reaffirm the moral superiority of those in attendance. The inquisitors beam piously. The crowd gasps, clutches rosaries, and gorges on the spectacle. You stand mute, your role already decided. Then come the sentences. Some will be spared the flames, for now. Public penance, confiscation of property, exile. These too are valuable warnings to the crowd, but for others, the path leads straight to the stake. If you are among them, you will be led with great ceremony to the pyres already prepared. The wood stacked high, the ropes ready. The executioners, secular of course, since the church does not technically shed blood, wait with professional detachment. The inquisitors will murmur prayers, the crowd will press forward eagerly. You will be given a final chance to repent. Do so, and you may be strangled before the flames are lit. Decline, and you will burn alive, a living torch in service of orthodoxy. Either way, your fate is sealed. The flames are ready. The audience awaits its finale. And when the fires are lit, the crowd will cheer. Children will laugh. Vendors will sell more sweets. The inquisitors will watch with serene satisfaction, already planning the next auto-da-fe. The spectacle must continue. It reinforces faith, obedience, and, not least, the absolute power of the Holy Office. Your ashes will be scattered, your name recorded in the ledgers of the damned, and life in the city will return to normal. Until the next performance, of course. The Inquisition is nothing if not consistent. So when the smoke rises and the bells toll, remember this. The auto-da-fe is not about justice. It is about theatre. It is about reminding every trembling soul in the audience that faith is not a private matter. It is public, visible, and policed with fire and rope. And today, you are the star of the show. Congratulations. It may comfort you, as the flames consume your heretical flesh, to know that someone will dine well tonight. Because once the smoke clears and the ashes settle, the solemn faces of the inquisitors will not retire to their cells for penance and fasting. Oh no, they will retire to the banquet hall, for after every great auto-da-fe, there must naturally follow an equally great feast. Justice may be served in the square, but roast duck and almond pastries are served at the table, and the latter is infinitely more satisfying to those in charge. These banquets are not incidental. They are an established tradition, woven into the very fabric of inquisitorial life. The same inquisitors who spent the morning condemning souls with grave pronouncements will, by evening, be raising goblets of rich wine, toasting to the triumph of faith with mouths still stained by the smoke of burning flesh. The shift from holy somberness to gluttonous revelry is performed with seamless grace. After all, meting out divine justice is hard work. One must replenish the body after purifying so many souls, and what feasts they are. Paid for, conveniently enough, in part by the confiscated wealth of the very heretics just consigned to the stake. Your silverware, your candlesticks, your best table linens, all now repurposed to grace the tables where your judges will gorge themselves. The irony is as thick as the sauce on their capons. Wine flows freely, fine vintages, of course, because even the most zealous inquisitor appreciates the difference between a rustic red and a noble Rioja. Platters groan under the weight of roasted meats, spiced fruits, and sugared confections. Conversation is lively, laughter frequent. The purging of heresy is cause for celebration, and no one appreciates this fact more than those who profit directly from the spectacle. And the guest list? Oh, it is selective. Only those of proper standing, senior inquisitors, wealthy patrons of the church, prominent nobles eager to be seen supporting orthodoxy. Deals are struck over boar's head and quince jelly. Alliances are cemented between courses. A heretic burned is more than a spiritual victory. It is a social event, a networking opportunity par excellence. The finest minds of Spain gather here, not to debate theology, but to secure favours and exchange knowing glances over steaming bowls of partridge stew. Of course, there is a certain etiquette to these feasts. It would be gauche to mention the smell of burned flesh still lingering on one's cloak. One must instead speak of the day's auto da fe in abstract terms, a triumph of faith, a renewal of the people's devotion. The actual mechanics of interrogation, torture, and execution are best left unspoken over dessert. It is poor form to let such sordid realities sour the enjoyment of marzipan and candied oranges. The guests know this. They maintain the polite fiction that justice was served, the guilty punished, the church strengthened. And as the night wears on and the wine loosens tongues, the fiction becomes easier to believe. And what of the lower ranks? The guards, the scribes, the lesser clerks who toiled so diligently to prepare today's spectacle. They too receive their share. Not at the high table, of course, but in the kitchens and servants' halls. Platters of leftover meats, jugs of rougher wine, enough to ensure their continued loyalty and enthusiasm. After all, it would not do for the machinery of the Inquisition to rust for lack of proper lubrication, be it blood, gold, or good strong drink. So as you, or what remains of you, to smoulder beneath the stars, take comfort in knowing that your sacrifice has provided excellent entertainment and an even better meal. The inquisitors will retire well fed, the nobles will depart with stomachs full and reputations burnished, and the church will awaken tomorrow, flush with new funds and fresh fear to wield. The cycle continues, the wheel turns, and somewhere in the kitchens another San Benito is being stitched, because nothing pairs so well with a fine banquet as the promise of next month's entertainment. Bon appétit. It may astonish you to learn that not every prisoner of the Spanish Inquisition ends in flames. Some, through a peculiar alchemy of luck, bribery, political expedients, and sheer survival instinct, are actually released. But do not mistake this for mercy. No one leaves the embrace of the Holy Office unscathed. The process of release is less an act of justice, and more a calculated manoeuvre. The deliberate reminder that freedom, such as it is, comes at the Inquisition's pleasure, and always with strings attached, long, barbed, and inescapable. The path to release is neither transparent nor predictable. It does not follow a timeline. No kindly friar announces that your penance is complete. Instead, the decision emerges from the same murky bureaucratic swamp that swallowed your life in the first place. Sometimes it is political, a favour called in by a wealthy relative, a discreet donation finding its way into the right purse. Other times it is simply that the inquisitors have wrung all the usefulness they can from you. You have confessed sufficiently. You have implicated enough others. You have served your purpose as an example. Why waste resources keeping you in chains when your broken, cowed presence outside the walls will serve as an even better deterrent? When the decision is made, the news does not come with fanfare. A guard appears, expression unreadable, and informs you with the same tone he might use to announce that your bucket is full. You are being released. The words sound hollow. You scarcely believe them, and well you should not, for this release is not freedom. It is parole with permanent conditions. You will be required to perform public penance, perhaps barefoot in the streets, perhaps beneath the watchful eyes of the same crowd that jeered you on Auto da Fe Day. You will wear the San Benito once more, this time not on the stage but in your own parish church, where it will be hung to remind all who enter of your fall from grace. Your name will linger on the lips of your neighbours long after the ink on your release order dries. Nor is your property returned. Whatever wealth or lands you possessed have long since been absorbed into the coffers of the church or distributed to the deserving. You will emerge penniless, dependent on the dubious charity of those who now regard you as tainted. Employment? Difficult at best. Friendships? Shattered. Marriage prospects? Laughable. You're a marked soul, a walking cautionary tale, and the Inquisition ensures this status is maintained. Even years later, should you manage to rebuild some semblance of life, the Inquisitors may summon you again, not for new crimes, but for re-examination. After all, one can never be too certain of a heretic's sincerity. And do not think that silence will save you. You will be required to name those who aided your supposed heresy. You will be expected to inform on others should new suspicions arise. Failure to do so is grounds for immediate rearrest. You are, in effect, a conscript in the Holy Office's army of informants, a useful puppet whose fear ensures compliance. You may walk the streets again, but the cell door remains open behind you, waiting. And for those naive enough to hope that an official pardon will erase the stain, abandon such illusions. Pardons are rare, and even when granted, they do little to restore reputation. The Church may declare you reconciled, but the whispers will not cease. Children will point. Old women will cross themselves as you pass. Merchants will find reasons not to serve you. The San Benito may no longer hang around your neck, but it hangs invisibly over your life, a shroud from which there is no true escape. So yes, some prisoners are released, and some even live many more years, but they do so in a state of perpetual fear, their every word and action shadowed by the threat of renewed scrutiny. In this way, the Inquisition's grip extends far beyond the walls of its cells. It reaches into every corner of society, enforced not just by guards and inquisitors, but by the eyes and tongues of the faithful. And should your courage falter, should your compliance waver, should some old accusation resurface, well, you know the way back. The wheel always turns, the cell is always ready, and the next performance is only ever a whisper away. So, you are released. You step out into the sunlight, blinking, gaunt, and stripped of everything save the lingering stench of your cell and the invisible brand of heresy now burned into your very name. You are alive, which by the standards of the Spanish Inquisition is a notable achievement. But do not mistake this for freedom. What awaits you beyond the prison walls is no triumphal return to normal life. It is exile within your own city, a daily theatre of suspicion, humiliation, and quiet terror. The Inquisition may have loosened its physical grip, but its shadow will dog your every step until your final breath, and perhaps beyond. First, there is the matter of your reputation, gone, vaporized, reduced to ashes no less final than those of the poor souls burned at the last auto da fe. You are a known heretic, a confessed sinner, regardless of how coerced that confession might have been. Your name has been read aloud in the square, recorded in parish registers, whispered in markets and taverns. Every glance you now attract will be laced with suspicion. Every conversation will falter when you approach. Doors that once opened freely will now remain firmly shut. You will discover that friendship, like wealth, is easily confiscated in inquisitorial Spain. And speaking of wealth, you have none. Whatever property you once possessed is long gone, claimed by the Holy Office as just recompense for its labours. Your clothes, your home, your savings, redistributed to more virtuous hands. You're released with little more than the tattered San Benito you were forced to wear, and perhaps a crust of bread for the road. If you are lucky, a distant relative or an old acquaintance may take pity and offer a corner of their house. But such charity is dangerous. To associate with a former heretic is itself suspect. Those who help you too openly may soon find themselves facing the same tribunal that devoured you. And so, most will avert their gaze and offer only mumbled prayers for your soul from a safe distance. Employment? A fantasy. No guild will accept you. No merchant will risk hiring a branded heretic. You might scrape by on menial labour, assuming your body has not been too broken by months of captivity. Perhaps you will sell trinkets in the street, or beg beneath church steps. The church loves visible penance. A former heretic grovelling in rags makes an excellent cautionary tale, and of course, the Inquisitors watch. Always. You will be required to attend Mass regularly, under the eye of the parish priest. You will report to the local inquisitorial representative. Any lapse in piety, any whisper of disobedience, will bring the wheel grinding back to life. And what of the San Benito? Even if you're no longer forced to wear it, it remains. A cloth effigy hung in your church, embroidered with your name and sins. A public reminder that here once lived a heretic. Parishioners will pass it each Sunday, their children taught to fear the example it sets. You will sit beneath it, head bowed, knowing that every gaze lingers a little longer on your stooped form. The San Benito will outlive you. Long after you're gone, its faded fabric will continue whispering your shame to generations yet unborn. And then there is the fear, constant, gnawing, inescapable. You know how easily the wheel turns. You know how thin the line between freedom and the next summons. A careless word, a misunderstood jest, a neighbour's grudge. Any of these can send you tumbling back into the inquisitorial maw. You will censor your speech, your thoughts, even your prayers. You will live in perpetual anticipation of the knock on the door, the parchment bearing the seal of the Holy Office. And when sleep comes, if it comes, your dreams will be filled with dim corridors, the scrape of iron, the hiss of whispered accusations. So yes, you have survived. You have been released. And now you will spend the rest of your life surviving the aftermath. A half-life, lived in the long shadow of the pyres. You are a warning, a ghost among the living, a reminder that the Inquisition never truly lets go. And when at last you die, quietly, in poverty, forgotten save for the San Benito above the altar, it will not be liberation, but a footnote in the endless grinding record of a system that devours its own children and calls it piety. Sleep well. Of course, while you stagger half alive through the ruins of your former life, it is worth remembering that many do not reach even this grim milestone. There are those who enter the Inquisition's grasp and simply vanish. They are not paraded in auto da fe. They are not released to shiver beneath a San Benito. They do not return at all. Their names may linger for a while, whispered in dark corners, scrawled on the backs of confiscation orders, but their bodies, their fates, a mystery. Conveniently so. For in the Inquisition's grand machinery, some wheels turn not toward public spectacle, but toward quiet oblivion. There are many paths to such an end. Some prisoners perish under interrogation, officially of natural causes, of course. The doctors, those faithful servants of the system, will dutifully sign off on such conclusions. Heart failure, an unfortunate collapse, the strain of confession proving too much for an already weak constitution. Never mind that the body bears the unmistakable marks of rope, rack, or water. The records will show that the Inquisitors acted with the utmost care and compassion. A tragedy, truly, but such is the price of spiritual correction. Others waste away in the cells, forgotten by all but the rats. Not every case proceeds briskly to judgment. Files are misplaced. Priorities shift. A prisoner deemed no longer useful, too broken, too diseased, too politically inconvenient, may simply be allowed to rot. Food grows scarcer. Guards cease their visits. The walls close in. One day, the bucket goes unemptied. The door remains shut. The scribes move on to fresher prey. When the corpse is finally discovered, it will be discreetly removed, the records quietly adjusted. No auto da fe, no public spectacle, merely an erasure, an editing of history. And then there are those whose disappearances serve a darker purpose. Political prisoners too well connected to be openly condemned, yet too dangerous to be released. For such cases, the Inquisition offers a simple solution: perpetual imprisonment. No sentence is announced, no release is granted. The prisoner remains in limbo, shunted between cells, passed from jailer to jailer, until even they lose track of who the wretch once was. Time does the rest. The body weakens, the mind crumbles. Eventually the person ceases to exist in any meaningful sense, a living ghost in the bowels of the tribunal. And when at last the remains are disposed of, no one asks questions, no one dares. Outside, of course, the absences are noted, at first. Families inquire, friends whisper. But in inquisitorial Spain, to ask too persistently is to risk joining the vanished. A widow who speaks too loudly may find herself summoned. A brother who petitions too boldly may discover old debts suddenly unearthed. Or worse, accusations conveniently materializing. The message is clear. let the vanished remain vanished. The living have enough to fear already. In time, the names fade from conversation. The community moves on. The gap in the pew is filled. The world forgets. The Inquisition never does. Their ledgers are patient. Their archives eternal. And what of the property? Well, it does not vanish. It is confiscated, reallocated. The church and the crown ensure that even those whose bodies disappear contribute to the system's sustenance. Lands are sold, titles revoked, wealth distributed, always in the name of righteousness naturally. And should a child of the vanished reach adulthood and seek to reclaim a birthright, they will find the path barred by legal quagmires and the shadow of a father's unspoken sins. The stain persists, even when the victim does not. So as you shuffle through your half-life marked and watched, take a strange sort of comfort. At least you were deemed worthy of spectacle. At least your ruin served a purpose. For those who never return, there is no such grim honour. They are footnotes erased before they are written. Forgotten in life, and in death, a useful reminder to the wise that in inquisitorial Spain, the worst fate is not to be condemned. It is to be unremembered. Sleep well, if you can. You remain among the visible, for now. And now, you might think, surely this madness could not have persisted for long. A few fevered years, perhaps. A grim episode destined to burn itself out like so many of the victims it consumed. But no, the Spanish Inquisition was not a fleeting horror. It was a centuries-long institution, an enduring monument to bureaucracy, fanaticism, and the sheer inertia of power. While the bonfires of heretics may have flickered, the apparatus that fed them burned steadily for generation upon generation. You, poor soul, are but one more mote in its vast and choking smoke. It began, formally, in the year 1478, though the seeds had been sown long before in the simmering paranoia over conversos moriscos and anyone deemed insufficiently pure of blood or faith. What followed was not an outburst, but a carefully constructed machine. Tribunals established in every major city. Legions of clerks, guards, torturers and priests employed full-time. An entire branch of church and crown dedicated to rooting out sin, or at least the convenient appearance thereof. And the wheels, once set in motion, proved almost impossible to stop. For over 300 years, the Inquisition operated as a permanent fixture of Spanish life. Monarchs came and went. Wars were fought. Empires rose and crumbled. But through it all, the Holy Office endured, adapting, adjusting, reinventing its pretexts as needed. When one flavour of heresy waned, another conveniently appeared. Protestants, witches, freethinkers, philosophers, Jews, Muslims, mystics, scientists. The list was endlessly renewable. The enemy was always there, if one knew where to look. And if not, well, a helpful accusation could always be arranged. And the methods? Oh, they too evolved. The rack gave way to subtler torments. The public auto-da-fe waxed and waned with political fashion. At times the flames burned high in the public square. At others the machinery worked more discreetly behind monastery walls. But the core remained unchanged. Suspicion, accusation, confession, ruin. The bureaucracy metastasized, filling archives with endless files, enough parchment to carpet Spain thrice over. And through it all, the faithful quills of inquisitorial scribes never ceased their scratching. Even the Enlightenment, that grand tide of reason, failed to wash it away entirely. While philosophers in Paris penned treatises on liberty and tolerance, the Spanish inquisitors simply sharpened their quills and adjusted their rhetoric. Now the enemies of faith were also enemies of the state. Revolutionaries, liberals, anyone who dared question the divine right of the monarch and church alike. The tribunal found no shortage of fresh victims to process. The wheel continued to turn, greased now not only by fear of heresy, but by fear of ideas. It was not until the 19th century, yes, the 19th century, that the Inquisition was formally dismantled. By then it had become something of an embarrassment, even to its former patrons. The modern world had little patience for public burnings and secret tribunals, though Spain, ever fond of its traditions, required more than one official decree to finally shutter the Holy Office's doors. But even as the formal machinery ground to a halt, the culture of fear, the legacy of suspicion, lingered. Generations had grown up under its shadow. Entire communities had learned the fine art of self-censorship, of whispered caution, of eyes that slid away at the wrong moment. The Inquisition might have died, but its ghost remained, and in many ways still does. So how long did it last? Far longer than reason should have allowed. Long enough to devour thousands of lives, to poison centuries of discourse, to burn itself into the very bones of Spain. And for those caught within its gears, like you, time mattered little. Whether it was 1500 or 1700 or 1800, the process was the same. The dungeon was just as cold, the interrogations just as cruel, the San Benito just as yellow and absurd. The smoke rising from the stake smelled no sweeter. 3 centuries or 3 years, for the condemned the difference was academic. The wheel turned and the bodies fed it. So sleep well, knowing this. The Spanish Inquisition was not a storm. It was a climate, pervasive, enduring, inescapable. And had you been so unfortunate as to live in Spain for most of those 300 years, odds are good you would have met it, whether by malice, by mistake, or simply by the casual betrayal of someone in need of a new hat. The wheel would have found you. It found everyone in the end. And now, having survived, or at least stumbled through this grim little tour, you may be wondering, would you last a day in the Spanish Inquisition? It is a charming thought. But let us be perfectly clear. You would not. Not even close. Not because you lack courage or cleverness or an unshakable faith. No, it is much simpler than that. The system was designed, meticulously, deliberately, so that no one could withstand it. Not saints, not scholars, not simple farmers or pious shopkeepers. The moment your name entered the tribunal's ledgers, you were already as good as damned. The rest was mere administrative formality. Consider the entry point. You would not need to commit a crime or even a sin to be summoned. A careless remark, an old grudge, a neighbour's envy, a rival's ambition, any of these would suffice. Perhaps you greeted a converso too warmly. Perhaps you failed to kneel deeply enough during Mass. Perhaps your child repeated some foolish rhyme overheard in the marketplace. The cause mattered little. The accusation was the spark. The machinery of the Inquisition provided the fire. And once it began turning, there was no way out. And let us speak plainly. You would not endure the interrogations. No one did. The first round of questions might pass. Trembling, sweating, heart pounding. But the second, the third, the 10th. Each session eroded not just your body, but your mind. The Inquisitors were experts at unmaking you, piece by piece, with rope and water, with words and silence. Your memory would fracture, your will would crumble, your sense of reality would warp. Soon you would confess to anything, to save yourself, to end the pain, to please your captors, even to protect others from further scrutiny. You would not hold fast to the truth. You would beg for the lie they wanted. Everyone did. That was the point. And should you somehow survive to the release phase, stripped, broken, publicly shamed, you would not last long in the outside world either. The poverty, the ostracism, the constant fear of rearrest would gnaw at you more cruelly than any chain. You would live half hidden, half starved, waiting for the next knock at the door. Sleep would elude you. Joy would become a foreign concept. The mere sound of the church bells would send cold dread down your spine. You would count the days not by feast or festival, but by how many had passed since your last summons. And when, not if, you were called again, your soul would already be too thin, too hollow to resist. Or perhaps you would never be released at all. Perhaps your fate would be sealed beneath the tribunal, your name scratched in a ledger, your body forgotten in a pit. The official records would list your passing in clinical terms. The city would continue its bustle. Children would chase hoops through the same square where you had once stood in yellow, beneath jeering crowds. The wheel would turn on, untroubled, awaiting its next victim. You would be one more ghost, one more echo in the long dark corridors of the Holy Office. So no, you would not last a day. Not in spirit, not in body, not in reputation. The Spanish Inquisition was not built to be survived. It was built to be obeyed, feared, and fed. And whether you fell in flames or in silence, whether your fate was public or private, your end would serve the same purpose, to remind those still breathing that faith in inquisitorial Spain was not a matter of the heart. It was a matter of life and death, and mostly death.